ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So, we'll be continuing our discussion of the Vedanta philosophy, just an introduction. So today we'll be discussing what Vedanta has to say about the nature of God. First, before we start the discussion today, one very important point is to be understood. Otherwise, it is very difficult to understand the view of Vedanta regarding not only God but the world and other things also. So, all the philosophies discuss these, nature of God, nature of the world, because those are part of philosophy, that all comes under metaphysics. So Advaita Vedanta, of course, also discusses these questions, nature of God, nature of the world, but there is a difference. What is the difference? Sometimes in Vedanta we will see we don't find a clear-cut answer. Suppose if we ask whether the world is real, the Nyaya philosophy is realism. It categorically says, yes, the world is real. There is no doubt. There are no two questions. Vijnanavadin school of Buddhism says that nothing exists outside. The whole world is in the mind. There is no confusion, clear-cut answer. But in Vedanta, we find that is not the case. Vedanta says that to give a clear-cut answer for all is not possible, because the same truth, the same reality can be viewed from different standpoints, and all of them can be true. This is the chief difference. So when these truths change, we are going from not untruth to truth, as Swami Vivekananda says. We are going from lower truth to higher truth. One second. So this we have to remember, and this rule actually is nothing new, that we see the same thing from different perspectives, even in our day-to-day life, in the world. We see different things from different perspectives. The same person, for example, how a child looks upon his or her parents. When the child is very small, his mother is a protector. Father, when a child is very small, father is a playmate. Then he finds that father is more than that, he is taking care of me. Then later he finds that the same father is now a guide. And finally, after a certain age, father becomes more of a friend. So this we see in everyday life, that the same thing, when the subjective viewpoint changes, then the same person or thing is viewed in different ways. So we have to proceed from where we are. A small child when he looks upon his parents as a protector, it will take time to outgrow that. You cannot do it suddenly. Slowly it is a process of growth. So all of this depends from which level we see things. Even when we come by flight, so when we are about to land 10 minutes ago, we see everything small in the city. Slowly we start descending, then things become clearer. So is that earlier view of the city false? Not at all. That is also true, but this is also true. When we come down, we see absolutely clearly. So, same thing has been viewed from two different standpoints. The standpoint word in Vedanta, it will come again and again and again. So we have to be absolutely clear in our understanding. Because Vedanta says the nature of God from one standpoint is X, but from another standpoint it is Y. And both are true. So this has to be understood. For example, just to give an example of the standpoints, so we are living on the earth. We have day and night. Night it becomes dark. Day there is sunlight. But from the standpoint of the sun, if somebody is living on the sun, is there any night? It is all day. So these things depend upon our standpoint. Another example, daily we experience three states: waking, dreaming and deep sleep. And if some of you experience samadhi, I don't know. But these three we experience daily. Now, the waking state is true when we are awake. But where do all those objects go in dream? They don't exist anymore. The dream objects don't exist in the waking state. And in deep sleep there is nothing. So it depends upon our state, how we view things. So there cannot be one answer, Vedanta says, to the questions whether the world is real or unreal, or whether God is immanent or transcendent. Because we can view the truth, we can view the world only through the mind. And how we view it will depend upon the condition of the mind. That is the secret. You are viewing the world, suppose through a looking glass. So if the glass is red, everything will appear red. If the glass is green, everything will appear green. So how we see the world depends upon the state of mind that we see every day. The same world which we consider heaven, if some great tragedy occurs, it immediately becomes transferred into a hell. These things are happening around us. So, in philosophical discussions also, Vedanta says the truth, you call it God, you call it Brahman, you call it Ishvara, whatever, the truth will appear differently when the states of our mind change. And it will appear differently when we go beyond the mind. That is why Vedanta speaks of different kinds of realities, like the Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika, Paramarthika, all these things. And the Upanishads, if we read, we find contradictory statements, contradictory descriptions of reality. But they are not contradictory. They are only apparently contradictory. Because they know that how we view the reality will depend upon which state we are in. So this thing has to be carefully remembered. Otherwise, again and again there will be confusion. Sometime Mandukya Upanishad we will see that the world is unreal. Another scripture we will read, the world is unreal. Another we will read, the world is neither real or unreal. So all these things can be reconciled only when we understand this fact carefully, that everything depends upon the standpoint. This is very important. So now, before starting today's discussion, let us just recapitulate so that we can connect so so this we had discussed earlier. Advaita Vedanta, what does it say about the world? Because the world and God are connected. So we have to just, those who are, of course, to understand today's discussion, it will be essential that we hear the earlier discussions, but we just will recapitulate here. So what is the nature of the world? Shankara's theory of Vivartavada, that is apparent change. Apparent change means, does God actually change into the world? So here Advaita Vedanta says that if you say God actually changes into the world, that is not true, that can never be true. Because a change in form does not mean a change in reality. And that which underlies all objects of the world and which is the ultimate cause of everything can only be pure existence. And this absolute existence, Brahman, is of the nature of self-revealing consciousness. Brahman has the power of manifesting itself in diverse apparent forms without really undergoing any modification. This is very important. And the changing of the objects of the world cannot be called real, but neither can they be called unreal. So all these we have discussed earlier, we won't go into that now. About the Advaita concept of the soul, we have discussed earlier. Identity between the self and God means an identity between their underlying essence. Otherwise, God and the small self can never be the same. What is that essence? That essence is that which persists through all its different states. The only thing which persists in the different states, waking, dreaming and deep sleep, is consciousness. So all these we have discussed earlier. So let us start. What Advaita Vedanta says about the nature of God. So God, according to Shankaracharya, again, like the world, can be conceived from two different points of view. What are those different points? First is the practical standpoint. In Vedanta it is called Vyavaharika Drishti. Practical standpoint means standpoint of the world. What we are doing. Eating, sleeping, drinking, all this. Believing the world to be real. All our behavior, we take for granted that the world is real. So if the world is real, then what is the nature of God? Because if world is real, then somebody must have created the world. somebody must be preserving the world. So God then, from the practical standpoint, is the cause of this world phenomenon. He is the creator, the sustainer, and also the destroyer of the world. And He is omnipotent and omniscient. He can do anything. And He knows everything. Then God is possessed of attributes, qualities. Omnipotence, omniscience are all qualities. So God in this aspect is called God with attributes. He is the Ishvara. Ishvara, Bhagavan, Parameshwara, whatever you say. So He is the ultimate cause of the world. He is what governs the world. We are all under that power. But as we have discussed earlier, Advaita Vedanta says that ultimately the world cannot be real. Ultimately, mind you. Why? Because if it was real, then it would have persisted through all time, through all states. But that doesn't happen. When we are in deep sleep, where does the world go? And those who have attained Samadhi, they say that when they go beyond the mind, the world completely disappears for them. So if the world was ultimately real, then it could not be negated. As we have seen just now, that only that thing which exists irrespective of any other condition can be called ultimately real. That which comes and goes, how can it be ultimately real? It cannot be. So Advaita Vedanta says that the world is an appearance. It cannot be ultimately real because it appears only till we are ignorant. When ajnana or ignorance disappears, then the world as we know it also disappears. So they say that yes, from the practical standpoint, God is the creator, sustainer, destroyer of the world, we agree. When, till what point? Till the world is regarded as real. But if the world at some state, it so happens that the world itself does not exist, then how can God be called the creator of the world when there is no world at all? So if you say that God is the creator, sustainer, destroyer of the world, and that is the ultimate definition of God, that is not true. Because it depends upon the existence of the world. At some stage of consciousness, you can call it samadhi or whatever, if the world does not exist, then how can God be creator? Then God is creating what? There is nothing to create. So Advaita Vedanta says this description of God, it is true from the practical standpoint. But if we reach one particular stage, this description does not hold good. So, two types of descriptions are mentioned in Vedanta. What are those? Those are first describing something, describing an object by mentioning its true essence. That is one way of description. Second way of description is describing something by an indication. So there is no, it is very simple. There is no need to get, it is not at all difficult. So by some examples, it will be absolutely clear. So I'll just show you the two definitions of Vedanta. Second. Those are called in Vedanta Swarupa Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana. So here you can see, it is very simple. We will see Swarupa means the true essence of a thing. So when we say Swarupa Lakshana means description of an object by mentioning its Swarupa, then it is describing the object as it is by itself. Nothing else is connected with that. So one such definition is that in the Taittiriya Upanishad it says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahma is Satya means it is truth, it is Jnanam, it is knowledge, Anantam, it is infinite. So this is called the Swarupa Lakshana, means that which defines God in his true essence. So Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, although they have different meanings, but actually they refer to only one indivisible Brahman. So essence is this, means this will never change. It will never be that God is untrue or he is ignorant or he is finite. It can never be. By his very nature, God is truth, knowledge and infinity. So this Swarupa Lakshana can never change. But there is another Lakshana, that is another way of describing, that is from a practical standpoint, indicating something. We will see how it is. That is called Tatastha Lakshana. It means definition by indication. So it is the indicator of what an object is through its attributes. So characteristic of a thing which is distinct from its nature, yet it serves to make it known. So when we define something by indication, we define it by pointing to some characteristic which is not that object, but which still helps us to know what the object is. So it sounds confusing, but it is not at all confusing when we see the examples. So what are the examples of this way of describing? See, it is very, we tend to see it every day. Suppose a person is playing the role of a king. Rama is playing the role of a king in a play. So he is a king how long? Only till he is an actor. So when we say Rama is king, we are describing Rama. But we are not describing Rama by mentioning his true essence. We are describing by a characteristic, attribute, which is only temporary. So Rama is a king. It is true. But how long? Till he is acting as a king in the play. So this means that this definition is by an indication. Mr. John is a carpenter. It is true, Mr. John is a carpenter, he is dealing with woodwork and all that stuff. But tomorrow, Mr. John can leave that profession also. He can become a miner. But till he is a carpenter, this is true definition. John is a carpenter. But when he leaves that profession, that it will not be true. Because that way of describing Mr. John is through one of his attributes. But if we say Mr. John is a human being, that is describing his real essence. That will never change. He can be a carpenter, he can be a miner, he can be a businessman, but he'll always be a human being. This is the thing. So two ways of describing. We use it every day, but we don't pay attention to that. So Vedanta says similarly for God. If you describe God by telling his essence, which will never change, then God becomes formless, without attributes, and he can only be described as neti neti. And Vedanta says that it is not this, it is not this. Because if something has no attributes, how will you describe it? So when we say God is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, He is truth, knowledge and infinity, actually it is not describing God. It is just negating what He is not. God is knowledge means He is not ignorance. He is truth means He is not untruth. And He is infinite means He is not finite. Because otherwise that supreme form of God we cannot describe. The only thing we can say about that is na iti. Na iti. God is not this. He is not this. He is not the objects of the world. He is something completely beyond. And what is that? Cannot be described. Why? Because you only describe a thing by its attributes. What is the color of pure water? How can you say? So here also Vedanta says that when we say God is the, describe God as the Janmadhyasya Yata, Janmadi from which, it is Brahma Sutra, it is defined, description of God. From whom? Janma Adi, birth, etc. Janma, Sthiti, Pralaya of the whole universe. That is true. Yes. But it is a Tatastha Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana means it is only indicating God by His activities. But when the world itself at one stage, if it ceases to be, then how can this definition hold true? If there is no world, then how can God be created? So there are two ways of defining God. Both are correct. None of them is wrong. But two ways are from two different standpoints. This we have to remember. If we look at from the transcendental standpoint, from the standpoint of Brahman, there is no world at all. Then what is the description of God? It is the same as what is the description of formless, attributeless Brahman. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Or na iti, na iti. But as soon as we come in within the purview of the world, as soon as our I comes, this whole world comes. Then I am different, you are different, the world is different, God is different. Then God is what? For us, He is whom we worship. Then God is the worshipped. and we are the worshippers. So, this definition of God, that He is all compassionate, all merciful, all these, it is absolutely true. But it is a tatastha lakshana. There may come a time when this difference between us and God completely disappears. If by God's grace that will happen, then we can experience God in His true essence. When that is done, then there will be no world at all. This consciousness of the world will not be there. It can come back again. If it comes back again God will be the worshipper, worshipped, and we will be the worshipper. This has to be remembered. So, just to give us an idea, I will just quote some definitions of this God in both ways. Swarupa Lakshana is true essence, and also Tatastha Lakshana, that is definition by indication. So Swarupa Lakshana, there are many passages. So there is one big passage in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad when a great sage Yagyavalkya describes the Akshara. Akshara means na kshayati. There is no change or decay in that. So he says, what is that like? He does not answer in any positive way because it cannot be described in any positive way. So he says what it is: asthulam, ananu, araswam, adirgham, alohitam, asneham, achhayam, atamo, all these negative. Asangam, arasam, agandham, achakshushkam, ashrutram. So what does this mean? It says it is neither gross nor minute, neither short nor long, neither redness nor moisture, neither shadow nor darkness, neither air nor akash. It is unattached, without any odor, without eyes or ears, without vocal organ or mind. So it is completely detached from everything. And the only way you can point out towards Him is by either negating or just mentioning what He is not. Satyam Jnanam Anantam or Satchit Ananda. It is the same thing. This is one kind of definition. Then Saguna Brahman or Ishvara, that is God with attributes, as we know God, has also been described in various ways. All the stotras which we sing are Saguna Brahman only. Jai Jagadish Hare. What is all this? It is all a description of God as we can view God. Now we cannot view God in His true essence. It is impossible. Just shouting Brahman, Brahman won't help. We have to start from where we are. So, these description of God, I will again quote from another Upanishad, description of the God with attributes. There are hundreds and thousands of such descriptions. So, Manomaya Prana Shariro Bharupa Satya Sankalpa Akashatma Sarva Karma Sarva Kama Sarva Gandha Sarva Rasa. So, just before we had seen that it is without any odor. Now he is telling just the opposite. It is Sarva Gandha. So naturally people will be confused. Upanishads, are they contradicting themselves? Not at all. So here he described as whose body is spirit, Manomaya, whose form is light, Bharupa, whose thoughts are true, Satya Sankalpa, whose nature is Akash, like Akash, Akash Atma, from whom all works, all desires, all odors and all taste proceeds. Sarva Karma, Sarva Kama, Sarva Gandha, Sarva Rasa. This is the description of Ishvara. So both are true. And for understanding this higher aspect of God, which is its true essence, what is his real nature, Shankara gives many examples. One example he gives is of the magician. We have already seen one example that a man is acting in a play. King, he is doing the role of a king. So another example given by Shankaracharya is a magician. So in our India there is a very great magician, P.C. Sarkar, world famous. So he is a magician, but if another magician knows his secret, how he does everything, for him is he P.C. Sarkar a magician? No, because he knows what P.C. Sarkar is doing behind the screen. So a magician is only a magician till he can fool ordinary people with his tricks. But after that he is just a human being. Once we don't become deceived, then it holds no secret for us. That is the thing. So if you have read Sherlock Holmes, I don't know whether you have read or not. If you have not, please read. Absolutely, there is nothing like that. So Sherlock Holmes had an uncanny ability. If a unknown person used to come into his room, he would immediately say, "Aren't you coming from this place? Is not your profession this?" Everything he would just tell. So people would think he's a magician. Then his assistant Dr. Watson was there. Dr. Watson would be amazed. How can you tell all this about this person just by looking at him? Then Sherlock Holmes gives out his secret, that how he deduces just by looking. Then after hearing, Watson says, "Oh, then you were not doing anything extraordinary." So Sherlock Holmes says, "That is why I don't tell you the secret, because then you will think I have done nothing extraordinary." But it is extraordinary because only he has that eyesight. He has that ability to see facts and interpret them correctly. So magician, of course, is a great magician. But for those who know the secret, he is a magician no longer. So this is, Shankaracharya says, yes, God is the preserver, destroyer, sustainer of the universe. That is true. But from whom ignorance has vanished in the state, when ignorance will vanish, then there is no creation itself. Then the description of God has to be changed. That description will be his transcendental state, what is called the Swarupa Lakshana. But till our eye is true, till this eye is true, this world is true. And we can only conceive of God through his attributes. This is the thing. As soon as people go beyond the world, people means only great saints can go, then they will stand face to face with the reality. Then I is gone. Their eye is gone. So who will describe whom? Sri Ramakrishna says a salt doll went to measure the ocean. So when it went, it dissolved in the ocean. So who will measure what? But we should remember that even when these saints, when they come down, again they worship God. Who were greater knowers of Brahman than Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Mirabai, Tulsidas, all these? Who were greater than they? Jesus Christ, Buddha, all these. But didn't they worship God? Because when they are not in that state, in the highest samadhi, when the I has come, again, God has to be the worshipped and we have to be the worshipper. Because remaining in the world, when the I is there, We can only view God from that perspective. That is the thing. This has to be clearly understood. Otherwise, there will be a lot of confusion. Shouting, I am Brahman won't help. We will just make a caricature, because now all these, previously the knowledge of the Upanishads would not be given to everybody. Now Swamiji wants that yes, this knowledge should be spread everywhere. But problem is, are we fit to benefit from that? To acquire that fitness, there are some qualities mentioned in Vedanta. First is renunciation. The very first is renunciation. Without that, if we try to understand these statements without guidance, we will make a caricature. That is the thing. So you have to be guided by these great people like Shankaracharya and all. So this is the only way, by these two descriptions, Shankaracharya says, through which we can understand in the light of common experience how God can both be in the world and yet He can be beyond the world. Because if you don't admit the transcendental aspect of God, then we have to say, when God has become the world, then He has changed into the world. But if God changes into the world, then how can He be Nitya? How can He be eternal? So He can be eternal only when He changes into the world, that is correct. But that change is not actual change. It is only apparent change. Actually, He can never be deviated from His true essence. So the world, as long as it appears, is in God, is God. Just as long as the snake appears, the rope is in the snake. You go in dim light, you are traveling, you see a rope, you think it to be a snake. As long as you see the snake, where is the snake? In the rope. Where else can he be? So till we see the world, where is God? God is in the world. God is the world. But when the delusion of snake vanishes, you see, then only rope remains. Then only God in His true essence remains. This means that although God has become the world from the practical standpoint, still He is untouched by the imperfections of the world. Just as a rope is not affected by the qualities of the snake. Because although we may see the snake for some time, but ultimately it is not there. So if something is not there, then how can it influence anything else? If the world is ultimately not there at all, then how can it touch God? It cannot. So this is a very great difference between Shankaracharya and the qualified non-dualists and of course the dualists. Qualified non-dualist means Vishishta Advaita, that is Ramanuja is the greatest exponent. So for Vishishta Advaita it becomes very difficult to reconcile this. When Vishishta Advaita does not admit of the ultimate transcendent God, then how can it reconcile that God has become the world, there is difference in God, differences inside in God, but He is not affected by it? How can that be? That is the thing. So, till we are in the world, till our ego exists, then God is an object of worship. And our self, when it does not exist at all, this small I, then the whole thing changes. Because the reality of the limited self, I, what we are constantly doing, reality of this limited self of a worldly person is based on ignorance. So when this ignorance goes, then the whole view changes. This is very important. So these definitions, both these definitions are very much true. But we have to know that they are true from different standpoints. There is no way the transcendental God, what is called Nirguna Nirakar Brahman, there is no way it can be defined. Because it is completely without attributes. So as we just discussed, Satyam Jnanam Anantam is only a negative way of describing it. Why can't it be described? Why can't the attributeless, formless God, why can't it be described? Why? It is a very subtle point. Every description of anything means what? We predicate some quality. Some quality we have to mention if you want to describe. This person is fat, he is thin, he is dark, he is fair. Some quality has to be mentioned. Now, see, interesting point. When we say that a person is thin, it automatically means that the person is not fat. Is it not? We don't have to say again that if this person is thin, he is not fat. No. As soon as you say a person is thin, fatness is negated. This means what? See, please pay attention. This means that if A is B, then he is not non-B. See, if A is B, it cannot be C, D, E, F. So when you say A is B, you negate everything else, C, D, E, F, I, J, K, whatever. So this means that when you describe anything in any way, when you ascribe any attribute, that thing becomes limited. When you say Mr. X is thin, then he cannot be fat because that fatness is excluded. Is it not? So, every determination is negation also. That is what the great philosopher Spinoza has said. If you say anything about anything, you also negate some of the things. If A is B, automatically you negate C, D, E, F, G, H, etc. So if you can describe God in this way, that God is this, if God is X, then you will be negating everything else. Then God will not be infinite. Then God will not be all that is. Because that description itself will limit God. Upanishads recognize this. That is why when they describe God in its true essence, transcendental essence, they deny all predicates. This concept has been developed by the great Shankaracharya when he says that God in its true essence, Nirguna Nirakar Brahman, transcendental essence cannot be described except through negation. But as soon as the world comes, then the whole thing changes. And the world appearance is due to Maya, God's Maya. Then God has to be regarded as the creator of the world, because God is the wielder of Maya. It is through His power that Maya plays all these different games. So till we are conscious of our individuality, till our eye is there, then God will be qualified by Maya. He'll be possessed of the power of creating the world. But we should remember, creativity is not an essential character of God. When God stops creating, will He not be God? He'll be God. When the actor playing the king, when the play stops, then will that person cease to exist? No, he will exist in its true essence. So God is only apparently associated with creativity. God as Saguna and God as Nirguna, that is with attributes and without attributes, therefore they are not two things. As Mr. John and Carpenter are not two things. Both are the same. So first is only a different aspect of the second. The first is relative to the world, the second is absolute. This is the thing. So this distinction which Advaita makes between standpoints should always be remembered when discussing Vedanta. But without knowing, as we saw, without knowing, we also are conscious of these descriptions. What is a currency note? What is it? It is just paper. But when you are supposed to pay something $10, will you pay somebody $100 because it is the same paper? Not at all. Because some attributes have been superimposed on that paper. If it is burnt, both the things, it reduced to the essence, it is all the same. But in that particular state, although both are paper, they are different. Photograph. What is a photograph of a person? Photograph of God. It is just photographic paper. But when we see, we bow down. What is an image? Just clay. When we see, we bow down. Why? Because from one standpoint it is clay, but from another standpoint it is God or any other thing. So every time in the world, in our day-to-day life, we apply this. That the same thing can be different when seen from two different standpoints. So when Sri Ramakrishna threw rupee and clay both in the Ganga, saying that earth is money and money is earth, what does it mean? This does not mean that Sri Ramakrishna considers money to be equal to clay, because when he knew that it was time to go away, he was very careful that Sarda Devi, Holy Mother, should be taken care of. So he arranged everything. So what does this mean? When Sri Ramakrishna threw clay and he said money is earth and earth is money, it means that from the standpoint of realization of God, both are the same. Both are worthless. If you want to realize God, to you, money should be just as little importance as clay. If you have any attraction for money, then it won't do. From that standpoint, both are completely useless. Although from the practical standpoint, they may have their use. So every day we see these instances. So all the levels, all the standpoints are true. But we cannot jump from one standpoint to another. We have to work hard and grow. A child, when he is very young, he has to go through kindergarten. You cannot simply put him in rocket science. It cannot be. Till he grows up, works hard and acquires that expertise. That is why Advaita cannot be simply superimposed. One cannot be an Advaitin just by telling I am an Advaitin. It is not so simple. Telling is one thing, but every day we are contradicting ourselves. How will that do? So we have to start from where we are. So Advaita Vedanta also believes in the gradual revelation of truth in stages with our spiritual progress. So the man who is completely unreflecting, who knows only eating, drinking and sleeping, he will find that the world is self-sufficient. He will have no urge to look beyond it. So he is what we call an atheist. But when he grows, he says that no, the world is not sufficient. I have seen everything, heard everything, enjoyed everything, but I can find no satisfaction in my heart. Then he will start looking beyond. He will start searching for God. He will start praying to the Creator. Then he becomes a theist, a believer in God. Then when he reaches the highest stage, then he will say that there is nothing called the world, it is only God. God is the only thing which exists. That is the highest teaching of the Upanishad. Sarvam khalu idam brahman. Sarvam khalvidam brahman. That is, all this, actually there is no this. Only that exists. So, then he reaches the level which is beyond all levels. So, all these aspects are true as Sri Ramakrishna has explained in this age, in very simple forms. So, how does he explain? A Brahmo devotee asks the master, Sir, has God forms or has he none? Master, no one can say with finality that God is only this and nothing else, because then we will be limiting God. He is formless and again he has forms. He explains this. How? He says, think of Brahman, Satchit Ananda, as a shoreless ocean. Okay, as far you can see only ocean, ocean, ocean. But there is a cooling influence. Then what happens? That water freezes at some place and turns into ice. So the same water which had no form acquires a form. In other words, God acquires all these various forms for his devotees and reveals himself to them as a person. But when the sun rises again, or with this global warming, what happens? The ice melts. Then God again becomes formless. So does this mean that God with form is not true? It is the same God. It depends on how we look at him. But then he says again what we have just discussed. What he is cannot be described. See, all these philosophical things Sri Ramakrishna has said in the simplest way. What he is cannot be described. Who will describe him? He who would do so disappears. In the highest knowledge, this I disappears. So who will describe what? Only God remains. Then the devotee cannot find his I anymore. So at no point, even the greatest of saints, they don't say, I am witnessing the transcendent form of God, so I need not worship God. Because till your I is there, God will always be worshipped. And when the I is gone, then who will say what? So this we have to remember, that yes, God in his transcendental form is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Nirguna, Nirakar, whatever you say. But only till you are in that state. When you come down, and even the greatest saints, when they come down, they start worshipping God again. Because as soon as they come within this domain of Mahamaya, when that I comes, then stomach pain comes, headache comes, then you cannot deny that God is the creator and we are all under the purview of his Maya. Sri Ramakrishna explains this wonderfully. His examples are so fantastic in such simple language. He says, suppose there is a court case. Judge is sitting there, the lawyers are below, and there is a, what do you say where they stand? Witnesses, Katgada. In English, what they say, I don't know.
Witness box.
Witness box. So persons will come and stand in the witness box. So judge is where? He is the supreme authority. And that person is in the witness box. There is no comparison. But if the judge is called to be a witness, suppose the lawyer says, I call the judge to be a witness. Judge has witnessed that crime. Then what will the judge do? He has to come there. So, see what a wonderful way of describing. There is no change in the judge. But now the same judge has become an ordinary witness. So the same Brahman becomes this ordinary Jiva when he is in the world. He will overcome this Jivahood only in one particular state. And when he becomes completely free, that is Videha Mukti, then of course, finished. He may never come back again. But if he comes back like special persons, like Shankaracharya, Vivekananda and all these persons, Mirabai, Tulsidas, Surdas, then again God will be the worshipped and he will be the worshipper. So both are true, both these aspects of God are true, but it depends from which standpoint we are seeing. So, just to give a summary, here you can see the summary. So what we have discussed today, you can see here, God has two aspects, one devoid of any qualifying attributes or characteristic, that is Nirvishesha, and the other endowed with qualities, which is Savishesha. The former is called Saguna Ishvara and the latter the Nirguna Brahman or the Supreme Brahman. So when Brahman is said to be devoid of any qualifying characteristics, what is meant is that it cannot be described by any characteristic signs. It is not to be apprehended by means of any attributes or indicative marks. For this reason, it is called the unqualified or unconditioned Brahman. The Saguna Ishwar or the Saguna Brahman, on the other hand, can be described by certain characteristic signs and can be recognized by virtue of its attributes. So, for all of us, this is the form of God which we can conceive of, which we can imagine, which we can worship. That is the thing. So, I think we all need a Tylenol now, so we can just take a break before we have some songs. So let us end the discussion here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanam.